August 7th, 1908. A dig site next to the Danube River in Austria, right beside a new railway line being cut through the valley. A workman on the excavation spots something in the dirt. It's small, about the size of your palm. It's covered in red pigment, and when he brushes it off, he's holding a carved stone woman. Wide hips, heavy chest, no face, just a woman, carved with obvious care by hands that stopped moving almost 30,000 years ago. She gets a name, the Venus of Willendorf. And at first everyone assumes she's a one-off. A curiosity. She wasn't. Over the next century, archaeologists find more of them, then more. Over 200 figurines scattered from France to Siberia spanning more than 20,000 years of human history, and they're almost all women. Here's the question nobody could ignore. The oldest sacred-looking objects our species ever made, the very first faces of whatever humans worshipped, are overwhelmingly female. So, did ancient humans worship a female god? The answer is going to mess with you a little bit, because it's yes and no. And the no part might be the most interesting thing in this entire video. Today, ask someone to picture God, and you know what most people see. An old man, big beard, sitting in the clouds, radiating disappointment. That image is so deep in our culture that God and he feel like the same word. But that image is recent. Shockingly recent. If you compressed all of human existence into a single year, the bearded sky father version of God shows up sometime in the last 2 weeks of December. For the other 11 and a half months, the sacred images humans actually carved, painted, and carried with them look completely different. They look like her, the woman from the riverbank. Let's start with the oldest one we've ever found. In 2008, in a cave in Germany called Hohlefels, archaeologists pulled a tiny figure out of the dirt, carved from mammoth ivory, about 6 centimeters tall, roughly 40,000 years old. It is the oldest undisputed depiction of a human being ever discovered. The first time our species carved ourselves, we carved a woman. And whoever made her didn't do it casually. Carving mammoth ivory with stone tools takes many hours of slow, careful work. 40,000 years ago, nobody spends that kind of time on decoration. Every object had to earn its place. This one mattered. Then comes Willendorf around 30,000 years ago. Then the Venus of Lausel, carved into a rock shelter in France, holding a horn with 13 notches cut into it, which some researchers think tracks the 13 lunar cycles in a year. Then Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, a figurine made of fired clay, which by the way is some of the oldest ceramic technology on Earth. Before humans made pots, before we made bricks, we were baking little clay women. Meanwhile, clear male figurines from the same period? Almost none. A handful of ambiguous fragments. That's it. For 20+ thousand years, when Ice Age humans carved a person, they carved a woman. Now, here's the thing. A carved woman is not automatically a goddess. And this is where archaeologists start arguing, because the honest answer is we don't actually know what these figurines were. Maybe they were fertility charms, carried by women hoping to survive childbirth, which back then was one of the most dangerous things a human could do. Maybe they were teaching tools. Maybe they were dolls. Maybe they were the Ice Age equivalent of a good luck charm hanging from your rearview mirror. And then there's my favorite theory, published by a researcher named Leroy McDermott. Maybe they're self-portraits. Look down at your own body right now. From your own eyes, your chest looks huge, your hips flare out, and your feet are tiny and far away. Now look at a Venus figurine. Huge chest, wide hips, tiny feet, no face. McDermott's argument is that these are women carving themselves, from their own point of view, in a world with no mirrors, which would make these not idols, but the world's first selfies. Is he right? Probably not entirely. But it tells you how wide open this question really is. Faceless stone doesn't come with a user manual, so the figurines alone can't answer our question. To get closer, we have to jump forward, to the moment humans stop wandering and start farming. Because that's when the evidence gets loud. 9,000 years ago, in what's now Turkey, there's a town called Çatalhöyük. Thousands of people, packed into mud brick houses, so tight there are no streets. You walked on the roofs, and climb down ladders into your living room. It's one of the oldest towns on Earth. And in 1961, digging through a grain bin in one of those houses, archaeologists found her, a clay woman seated on what looks like a throne, her hands resting on two leopards. She's calm. She's in charge. Two apex predators are her armrests. She was found in the grain. And that placement might be the whole story, because for early farmers, the fertility of the fields was life itself. A being who controlled birth, growth, and harvest wasn't one god among many. That was the main event. And when writing finally gets invented in Sumer, we stop guessing, because the Sumerians wrote their theology down. And one of the most powerful deities in the world's first cities is Inanna, goddess of love, war, and fertility, queen of heaven. Here's the detail that gets me. The first author in human history whose name we actually know, widely considered the first named writer ever, was a high priestess called Inanna over 4,000 years ago. And what's attached to her name? Hymns to Inanna. The oldest signed literature on Earth is a woman writing poetry to a goddess. And it's not just Mesopotamia. Egypt has Isis, so beloved her worship later spread across the entire Roman Empire. Japan's most important deity is Amaterasu, the sun itself, a woman, and the mythical ancestor of the emperors. In China, it's the goddess Nuwa who creates humanity out of clay. In the Andes, Pachamama, Earth Mother, is still worshipped today. So, case closed, right? Humanity started with the goddess, and the bearded guy is just the new management. That is exactly what a lot of very smart people concluded, and here's where the story takes a turn nobody expects. In the 20th century, an archaeologist named Maria Gimbutas put the pieces together into one giant, beautiful story. The figurines, Çatalhöyük, the goddesses. She argued they were all fragments of a single lost world she called Old Europe, a peaceful, egalitarian, woman-centered civilization that worshipped a great mother goddess for thousands of years. No war, no domination. Then, she said, it was all destroyed by patriarchal horse-riding warriors who swept in from the steppes with their male sky gods and rewrote religion in their own image. The theory exploded. Through the 60s and 70s, it went from academic books to bestsellers to bumper stickers announcing that God was coming back. And this time, she was angry. An entire spiritual movement grew around the idea that history's original religion was the goddess. And everything since has been a hostile takeover. It's a great story. Honestly, it's a fantastic story. And that should have been the warning sign. Because here's the part nobody talks about. When archaeologists went back and stress-tested the great goddess theory, it started coming apart for three big reasons. Reason 1. Worshipping a goddess tells you nothing about how a society treats actual women. The proof is Athens. Classical Athens worshipped Athena. The city is literally named after her. The Parthenon is her house. And at the same time, Athenian women couldn't vote, couldn't own property, and were expected to stay indoors and stay quiet. A goddess on the altar does not mean women in charge. History demonstrates this over and over. Reason 2. The evidence is stretched way too thin. Those figurines span 25,000 years and 8,000 kilometers. Grouping them into one religion is like finding the Mona Lisa and a garden gnome and concluding Europeans worship one sacred painted lady. And when modern excavators went back to Çatalhöyük with better methods, they found most figurines there are actually animals, dumped in the trash. And some of the goddess figures might represent respected elders, not deities at all. Reason 3, and this is the uncomfortable one. Every era invents the prehistory it wants. Victorian scholars looked at the Stone Age and saw primitive brutes, because empire needed savages to civilize. The 70s looked at the same stones and saw a peaceful matriarchal paradise, because that's the world people were fighting for. Same bones, same figurines, different mirror. The great goddess theory told us less about ancient humans and more about us. But before you write Gimbutas off completely, here's the twist on the twist. Her invasion story? The horse-riding warriors from the steppe who transformed Europe. In 2015, ancient DNA studies confirmed that a massive migration from the steppe really happened and genetically reshaped the continent. She was wrong about the paradise. She may have been half right about how it ended. And DNA had one more surprise. Just recently, researchers analyzing skeletons from Çatalhöyük, the town with the leopard throne, found that its households were organized around the maternal line. Not a matriarchy, not goddess rule, but a society where, genetically, the family tree ran through the mothers. The old theory was wrong, and yet somehow the truth underneath it keeps turning out to be more interesting. Which leaves one last question. If goddesses were everywhere early on, why does so much of the world now pray to a he? The leading answers all point at the same suspect: civilization itself. Farming created property. Property created inheritance, armies, and kings. And gods tend to get promoted in the image of whoever's running things on the ground. Societies organized around warrior kings ended up with warrior kings in the sky. Meanwhile, the goddesses didn't vanish. They got demoted, absorbed, rewritten as wives, mothers, and sidekicks of the new male bosses. And sometimes archaeology catches that process mid-edit. In the ruins of ancient Israelite sites, archaeologists have found inscriptions from almost 3,000 years ago that mention Yahweh, alongside a female figure called Asherah. Scholars still argue fiercely about what that pairing means, but it's a snapshot of a world where the story we know today was still being written, and the cast list looked different. So, did ancient humans worship a female god? Here's the honest answer: not one universal goddess ruling a lost paradise. That's a modern myth we projected backwards. But female sacred figures dominating the first 30,000 years of human art and religion? That's real. That's carved in ivory and stone, over and over, on 3 continents. For most of the time our species has existed, when humans reached for the sacred, the shape they reached for was a woman. Which brings us back to that riverbank in Austria, and the little stone figure someone shaped 30,000 years ago. We'll never know her name, or if she even had one. Goddess, charm, ancestor, selfie, she keeps her secret. But think about what she is: a human being in a brutal world, spending precious hours carving something with no practical use whatsoever. Because it meant something. Whatever she was for, someone believed in her. And 30,000 years later, we dug her up, put her behind museum glass, and millions of people traveled to stand in front of her. Which means, in a way, we still do. So here's my question for you. And I actually want to know. Goddess, lucky charm, ancestor, or the world's first selfie? Which one do you think she was? Drop your answer in the comments and defend it. The best argument gets pinned. And if you enjoy digging into questions like this, the ones history never fully answers, subscribe and hit the bell, because there's a lot more where this came from. It genuinely helps the channel more than you'd think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.